Yeah, I really didn't come to the understanding until probably 7 years ago. So, when I discovered it for my child, who was 14 at that point. So, prior to that, being a young child, all the way back many years ago, I was the one called shy, timid, quiet, reserved. I would be the one sitting in the back of the corner observing everyone.
Cue music. Places, everybody places. We're starting in 3, 2.
Welcome to the Autoimmune Hour, where we look at the rise of autoimmune disorders. I've brought together top experts that range from doctors, specialists, nutritionists, researchers, and even those recovering from autoimmune to bring you the latest, most up-to-date information about autoimmunity and how to live your life uninterrupted.
Thank you for joining us here on the Autoimmune Hour with Sharon Sayler. Always seek sound legal, medical, and or professional advice regarding any problems, conditions, and any of the recommendations you see, hear, or read here on the Autoimmune Hour, Understanding Autoimmune, and Life Interrupted Radio. Join the Autoimmune Hour's Courage Club. Sign up now at understandingautoimmune.com. Now, back to your host, Sharon Sayler.
Welcome, everyone, to the Autoimmune Hour. I'm Sharon Sayler from SharonSayler.com, and it's my honor to be with you here on another brand new episode. We're coming into fall time, and believe it or not, we're coming up on our 400th episode. We're closing in on that very fast. Oh, my goodness. First off, I can't believe that it's been almost 400 episodes. And secondly, I can't believe that fall's here already, at least here on this half of the equator. I know that it's the opposite on the other side, but I can't believe that we're in that change of seasons time again. I don't know where this year went. I don't know where the previous 2 years went either. But anyway, I've got my handy cup of tea here. Let me take a quick sip. Yep. Chai tea again, folks. Yep. You know me. And I've been doing the oat milk. That's really good. I like the flavor of that. That's really good. So anyway, now that I've all refreshed there with a little bit of caffeine hit, and I'm really excited today because we're going a little tangential. And because I've thought I've had some of these tendencies for a while, and I just wanted to hear from one of the experts on the topic because I think it plays into wellness and well-being. And so I invited Heather Nardi. She's the author of The Sensitive Ones to be on the show. She is an author, speaker, coach, and affectionately known as the Empath Mama, as she dedicates her career to supporting highly sensitive and empathic moms in living healthy, empowered lives. And she draws from her extensive education as a holistic coach and spiritual practitioner to create specialized tools and programs for sensitive mothers. And her book is all about also raising sensitive kids. So if you're a sensitive mom, how do you know if your kid is sensitive as well? So thanks for being on the show, Heather.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Thank you. And, as I read your book, some of the things that you said that people always said to you as a child rang so true for me. Why are you so sensitive? And I always seem to know things that people didn't know. It's kind of interesting. I never thought of myself as psychic. It just seemed obvious to me, a lot of the things that I could pick up on, people being sad before other people could, or things like that. So when I read your book, The Sensitive Ones, I was really excited to have you on the show. Tell us a little bit about your journey in understanding, first off, that you are a highly sensitive person and what led you to this path.
Yeah, I really didn't come to the understanding until probably 7 years ago. So when I discovered it for my child, who was 14 at that point. So prior to that, being a young child, all the way back many years ago, I was the one called shy, timid, quiet, reserved. I would be the one sitting in the back of the corner, observing everyone, watching what was happening in the classrooms. And I think that's common too, is we almost feel like we do have a psychic ability because we can sense what everyone else is feeling. And I think too, we can see patterns. And I've told my daughter this too, is to watch, because we're really good at seeing patterns in life. And then we can almost see what's going to happen next. So we can create this interesting, like the radio, my daughter will think what's next song is coming and she'll be right. Like, because we can almost sense this pattern in life. And like I said, we're the observers. So we're usually quiet and we don't speak unless we really have something important to say. And we're emotional. We are emotional beings a lot. I mean, everyone is, but we're to a higher extent. So we have a nervous system that is sensitive to external and internal stimuli. So that's why we are so sensitive, right? Quote unquote. But I didn't really discover this till, like I said, my daughter was 14 and she was struggling with mental illness. So anxiety, depression, suicidal ideation, and ADHD as well. And we had gone through mainstream medicine and we were searching for other answers because that was not helping for her. And I heard the term empath. Someone described that word to me. And I'm like, that is my daughter. And then I did research on my own about a highly sensitive person. And I'm like, that is me and my daughter. And now it really made clarity for who I was as a young person. And through, adolescence, through college, into my adulthood, it really all made sense to me. Some of the struggles and challenges that I had experienced, and my daughter as well. So then after we kind of figured out who we are and accepted that truth of having this trait, it's not a disorder. So having this trait, we moved forward on a different path and a different journey, which has been amazing. And she's thriving. So she hasn't been on prescription medications like she had been before. And we had the help of a doctor. We went off safely. And I think her nervous system just could not handle all that medication she was on. And I think the anxiety is us feeling, so a lot of people will feel anxious or have depression when they are highly sensitive because we see all the goodness. We want good out in the world. And then we watch the news. So that makes us feel sad. And we want to take care of everyone else and we can't because that's going to, wreak havoc on our system, on our nervous system, because we're trying to help everyone and we need to also work on ourselves. So there's so many pieces to being a highly sensitive person. But then when I say empath, that takes it to a higher level where you feel someone's emotions as if they are your own. So it's hard to distinguish what is yours and what is somebody else's. So it's just even a higher level of empathy, if that makes sense.
Oh, I'm glad you defined the difference because I think a lot of people, there's a big overlap, obviously. And I think a lot of people think they're the same thing. Like to say on the spectrum, because I think everybody has, is in tune with their emotions, at least I hope, at least at some level. And we're all on a spectrum, and highly sensitive people are on the higher part of that spectrum. And I find it fascinating that a lot of times that the people that are highly sensitive want to hide it because they feel they're misunderstood all the time. Like I'm kind of at a loss of words how to describe that misunderstanding, but would love to get out there this idea. No, it's just our nervous system and our ability to attune to these types of things is just different. The volume's turned up, so to speak.
Yes. I like that. Yeah, it's such a high level. So if you do look at a spectrum, empath is like the highest, then highly sensitive person. Sensitive, then, your average person has sensitivity. And then a narcissist would be at the farthest end where they don't have any type of empathy. So there's that spectrum. But it is, I think people don't understand or know what to do with you when you're showing such emotions. I think our world, I know I look at my parents, they didn't talk about their emotions. So if they had a child that was crying, I think they're like, what do I do with you? Like, I don't understand why you're reacting this way. And being from the Midwest in Minnesota, it's like you don't talk about anything, you shove everything down, your emotions. And a lot of people were probably raised that way as well. So if you have somebody that's very emotional, even happy emotion, like everything that you experience is elevated. I think many family members and parents didn't know how to handle that. So you were seen as different, even in school too. I'm sure other kids thought, this child is different. Why is she crying? Or, you could be crying from happiness. I know sometimes I tear because I'm just so overjoyed, so our emotions can be just such an extreme. And it's a trait that about 20% of the population have. And Dr. Elaine Aron is the one that started the term highly sensitive person. So I think it's starting to be more spoken about, and that really helps a lot of us that are to not feel so different.
Oh, I think so too. And it's such a gift for me now that I understand it.
Mm-hmm.
But I empathize with your daughter and your story too, because I understand the idea of, I too was the one in the back of the room, just observing the situation. I think you realize that you are different. And the part for me that I find interesting, though, is how many medical professionals will discount that highly sensitive part,
Mm-hmm.
which is unfortunate because I remember my first time getting acupuncture. I was like, no, not just a little bit lower. The point is just on me, is just to kind of telling them I knew in my body intuitively where these certain things were supposed to go, although it was foreign to me. But now the acupuncturist, he's been around a number of years, he just trusts what I say because it has shown him that I can tune into my own body in that same acute way that I'm attuning to other people as well. Is that a common trait in highly sensitive people, that they can attune to their own body equally?
I think so. I think it takes practice though, and speaking out. So that's good that you are speaking out about what you need, because I think a lot of us wouldn't, because we're unsure that we're right. Like we want to be a perfectionist, or we want to please other people. So we don't always speak up about what we need or what we feel is right. It's almost like advocating too for yourself. Even with the medical field, it's like you need to advocate for what you need. And a lot of times we do have the strong intuition, the strong intuitive knowing of what we need. But we're ones that don't want to speak up because we want to be like, oh, I don't want to hurt your feelings, because then I feel that I hurt your feelings. So it's a really this hard struggle for us as well.
I also think, is in the continuing that line of the medical, though, is I also know my patterns.
Mm-hmm.
So I know that if I am taking a medication, I need far less of it than someone else of my height and weight and physical makeup would. And it's been wonderful to find physicians in my world that respect that knowledge. And once you point out the pattern, they start to notice the pattern. They're like, yes, you're right. Yes, you're right. You're one of those people that responds differently to medications as well as to other things in the world.
Yes. And like I was saying earlier about patterns, how we notice patterns. So that's a great example of that.
I find it interesting that oftentimes, well, even especially as highly sensitive people, we'll see it in other people before we see it in ourselves. And I'm curious, as you began to explore this and things like that, what was it that really opened up your mind to this idea of, boy, there are probably a lot of us out there?
Yeah, well, I was actually at a crystal store and somebody was asking, can I help you? And I was describing my daughter to this person, and she's the one that said, I believe she's an empath. So what I was describing was, my daughter really struggles at school. I feel like she's very emotional. She's very anxious. She wants to be perfect at school. She doesn't, she wants to make sure all of her assignments are, like I said, perfect. So she would erase things to almost where there was no paper left. Like she wants to be a perfectionist to appease the teacher, not even herself. And it was third grade. She would be telling me, like, I'm afraid if I drop my pencil to pick it up, like she's just so aware too of, I can tell that my friend so-and-so is sad. And so she's taking on all of that, sitting in a classroom in third grade. And that's where her anxiety was diagnosed. So when I was describing that to this woman, she said, I think she's an empath, because she's feeling all those emotions. She's feeling the energy in the classroom, the teacher, her classmates, probably what's happening in the hallway down, in other spaces, and what's happening outside, so she's taking that all in. And so finding different tools then that were going to help her in more of a holistic way than putting medication in her, which I believe started to make things worse, because then we started to see depression and suicidal ideation when she got really high prescription medications. That's what we started to see. And I think it's too, her system couldn't handle that medication.
So when you spoke with the medical professional, I guess I'm curious. I can kind of see eyes rolling or something.
Yes.
If
Sure.
I said I was that story, I think my daughter's an empath, and that we explore that area of wellness. How did that go over? I mean, like I said, I know when I've said strange things about my own body or my pattern, I get eye rolling. I can't imagine getting the label of, oh, there's that crazy mom.
Right. I probably have that. We didn't tell them that that's what we believed she was. We just said that we are going to take her off of medication. We would like you to assist us. I felt like at that point, I didn't need to give them our personal reason or explanation. She had been in and out of like inpatient facilities. She had spent 6 months at a facility where she was living. And we were just at that point where we were like, we have to do something else. So I was really like, we're just going to try an alternative, and I was just straightforward on what we were doing. I didn't give them that explanation.
Okay. Because
I was like, I don't know, but at that point, it was also new too, that I probably had some fear of judgment because I was still trying to understand that. But I thought, I'm going to just tell them what we believe to be true for our daughter, what she needs, and ask them for their help. And they did, help us. And as she went off medication, what we noticed, I took a leave of absence from my job to be home with her as she was going off medication because I was afraid she would spiral or have some issues. So I was prepared, I'm here if we have to go to the hospital. She barely had any symptoms coming off. So to me, that was really an insurance that was not needed. Those medications weren't really needed for her and that we were doing the right thing. And then later on, we went back for a physical and they still had all her medications in her file. And we said she's no longer on any of those medications. And they didn't really question.
Oh, well, that's good.
Yeah. So, and then she had a situation where she had a panic attack a few years ago. And they're like, we recommend medication. And she started to cry because she's like, they didn't know her past. Like this was a different doctor. And then I told her, you decide what you want to do. You do not have to do that. But if you want to, you can. But those tears were, I think, the fear of going back onto a prescription. So, which she decided not to do.
Right. And we're not bashing prescriptions.
Oh,
they work for some people, but in this particular case, they
and even in my book, I say that a lot of our story is do what's right for you, find the journey or the path that works for you. This is, what I write about, what I share is what worked for us. But there's so many options out there. It's about really finding what works best for you. And we go to the doctor. We have our physicals. I believe doctors are amazing. I just think her body couldn't handle those specific medications. So yes, for sure. Do what is best.
So if someone's saying, oh my goodness, this sounds like my child or even myself, what are some recommendations that you have so people can come to their own conclusion of yes or no, or somewhere on the spectrum, and then what are some tips that you have that people can begin to claim who they are?
What I talk about a lot with clients in my community and what I discovered myself is really coming to that acceptance and understanding of what the trait is. So doing maybe some of your own research. Dr. Elaine Aron is a great one for the highly sensitive person. And then Dr. Judith Orloff is great for empath. But really understand and accept who you truly are, and you read more about it and you feel that it's almost that empowerment, like I finally feel understood. That really helps you then with even your child. I was like, oh, now I understand you in a better light. This is not a disorder that you have. This was how you were born and how you came into the world. So now let's move forward. let's discover what will help soothe your symptoms, or you're emotional when you're too emotional, or when you're having emotional, regulation is difficult for you. So that's really the place where I think people need to start, is really understanding who you are and accepting it. And then for like my daughter, we started then to try all different kind of holistic type practices, like meditation and journaling, simple things. She was 14. So depending on the age of your child, you're trying to find a way to regulate their emotion, their system, really, because they get overwhelmed and overstimulated very easily. So one thing I tell my husband is, when we go to the grocery store, you're like focused right here in front of you on what you're doing, what you're buying. When I go into the grocery store, I am like wide open. Like, I hear what's happening in aisle 2. If there's a baby crying, I see the lights, the bright lights flickering. I hear the music in the background. I know there's somebody on the other aisle that needs assistance. Like, I'm so aware of everything that's happening around me, but you're just like looking at your grocery list and what you need to do. So that's why we get so overwhelmed and overstimulated. So finding tools that work for you or for your child. And it's really about practicing different techniques. Breathing is a very good one. Even like before I go to the grocery store, it's like preparing myself almost to go to the store, because I know I'm going to be overwhelmed afterwards. So understanding what you need, what works best for you. And I think trying different practices is what will be helpful. And then coming up with a plan for you, and then a plan for your child. One thing I do want to say for sure is talk about emotions. Because when we were raised, like I said, they weren't talked about. So when I'm sad or mad or anything, I say to my kids, I'm feeling really sad right now. I'm going to take a few minutes. I'm going to go in my room, whatever I'm going to do. So if you practice that with your kids, even at a young age, then they will be able to do the same. Because when they're in that very emotional upset, they don't know how to maybe verbalize. But if you can even be calm with them and ask them, how are you feeling? Maybe where are you feeling it in your body? What do you need right now? That'll be so beneficial.
Mm. It just sounds wonderful just listening to it
Right?
as an adult,
Yeah.
thinking back,
Why didn't anyone ask me?
the number of times that would have been
Right.
nice.
Well, and that's why I think too, like now it's like no one's really asking me, but I'm going to ask myself and tell them. So like even me, what am I feeling right now? I'm feeling really angry. I'm not sure why, but then I'll tell my family, I'm really short with you because I'm angry and I'm not sure why, but I'm going to go journal for a little bit and then I'll come back and talk with you. So if we could all just really be that open, it would be amazing, instead of just reacting and yelling at each other, because then you're just, building that up and you're bouncing that energy, especially highly sensitive people and empaths. You're building that emotion off each other and it's hard to get it back down. So I have a lot of parents that say, when I'm anxious, my child gets anxious, then I get even more anxious. So it's like this continuous process. So I'm like, you have to be the stable one. You have to come to some point there, step away and take a few breaths or something, and then come back.
Well, that's true if we're in the fight, flight, or freeze mode too, as well. So even if we're not high on the spectrum of highly sensitive, if I'm fearful in the moment, I remember my kids also got fearful, and I always related to that they could, that innate sense of fight, flight, or freeze was kicking in, because I do know that can be quite contagious. Right. So whether you're on that spectrum or not, being able to speak about your emotions is very critical, especially when our little ones are picking up and they don't have the words for it yet.
And even for little ones, you can buy, even if you go online, you can search little pictures that can show you like sad, happy, and they can point to how they're feeling to even start that, because we're super emotional. So if we can start that pattern of expressing those emotions, and then how we can work through those emotions, that'll be amazing for your family.
Now, I'm curious, two things came up in our conversation. First off, you had mentioned your husband and he's focused, and I reflected on a couple of males in my life, like, okay, they are too. Is there a gender difference? Like, are more women highly sensitive, more men, or is it about equal?
Dr. Elaine Aron says it does seem to be like there are more females than males, but there are males. And I feel like the males are really finding it even more challenging because of stereotypes of males being emotional. So there could be, it could be even an even balance, but males aren't wanting to speak about it. So I feel like my husband is quite emotional, or sensitive, but not to that level. But he's becoming more sensitive, I think, too, or feeling comfortable enough to express it.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking about the couple of men in my life when you mentioned the focus. I was like, well, I know people like that, and a couple of guys came to mind. You had mentioned your husband is coming around, or being. I'm beginning to understand what's going on, and I just find it fascinating about this idea of how people slowly begin to adapt to the idea. How do you bring it up? I was like, oh, honey, by the way, I'm a highly sensitive person.
Yes.
And they either go, duh, or so what's that mean to me?
Right. Well, and I do have quite a few moms that are like, how do I bring that up? Or my husband doesn't understand what that means. So I think even if you have Dr. Elaine Aron again, she has many books out there, and it's scientifically based. Like, she studied it. So I feel like if there's someone more like my husband, where like, I need more proof than just, this woo kind of idea. That book was very helpful. And there's some movies that she has out there too, that are based on being a sensitive person. There's even one around relationships. So I think if they're open to learning and understanding, and I'm sure if they're married to you and love you, they will do that, but it gives them more of like, not just you telling them. It's really statistics and that type of information.
Oh, and that's always helpful to me.
Yes. Well, for my husband, it was like, this is what I found. This is the data, right? He's more of that type of a person.
Right, that it truly exists, because it could be, especially if you go into the realm of empath. I think people all of a sudden go very woo on you.
Yes. Yeah.
So, okay. So we need to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to talk some more with Heather about highly sensitive people, also known as HSPs. We'll be right back.
Life Interrupted Radio will return after these messages from our sponsors. It's great sponsors like these that keep this show coming to you every week. Be sure and stop by lifeinterruptedradio.com to learn more.
Your conscious lifestyle on steroids. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
If you're worried your friend may be struggling, remember, you don't have to be there to be there.
You can say, how are you, or get a fake tattoo. You can ask with an app if it works for you. You could chat on the game, kick off your flip-flops. You can ask on your couch while you binge watch. Whatever gets you talking.
Reach out to a friend about their mental health. Learn how you can help at seizetheawkward.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council, American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, and the JED Foundation.
OMTimes Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTimes, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Listen and imagine. It takes 5 seconds to send a text, and for those 5 seconds, you're driving blind. Life is worth more than a text. Stay alive. Don't text and drive.
Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org, a message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, Noise, and the Ad Council.
Hi, this is Sharon, and of course you know me from here on the Autoimmune Hour. Maybe you don't know I'm also an author. My latest book is for kids. It's Pinky Chenille and the Rainbow Hunters, a winner of a 5-star Reader's Favorite review. It's perfect for your early reader and a great bedtime story for your young adventurers. Check it out over at pinkychenille.com. That's PinkyChenille.com. See you there. Welcome back, everyone, to the Autoimmune Hour. I'm Sharon Sayler from SharonSayler.com. And tonight we're here with Heather Nardi. She's known as the Empath Mama, and she's an author, speaker, and coach, and the author of The Sensitive Ones, and as well as her other writings. And we're talking about highly sensitive people and whether you are one or you're raising one or more. It's a really important topic to be aware of. And one of the things I wanted to talk to Heather about was, I'm curious if there's a connection. I mean, to me, I feel like it's an intuitive connection, at least, that highly sensitive people, it must take a physical toll on their being if they come to that knowledge about being highly sensitive later in life. I'm thinking, I know I myself put myself on that spectrum, and I'm thinking of all the stress and other things that I went through before I came to that conclusion with myself.
Yeah, so there seems to be a big correlation because we are so stressed. We're living that life of overwhelm and overstimulation. And like me, I didn't know that I was till later in my life. So if you're living that way and then you don't have the tools to help yourself through, you get to the point where I've never been diagnosed, but I have fatigue. So I normally take a nap throughout the day. I'm really tired. That's my practice too, as to help myself through overwhelm. But there are quite a few that do get adrenal fatigue because you're so often in that fight, flight, freeze phase, that in your body creates that cortisol. So there's a lot of different disease that people seem to suffer through as well. And maybe they don't even understand that they are a highly sensitive person. So it might be something to consider. My daughter had migraines. I think some of us are very sensitive to foods as well. Her skin, she gets quite a bit of eczema. So not just, emotions, but we are sensitive to everything external as well. So if you think of food products, so you might have celiac or food, allergies. So I think that was part of her migraine issues. And we both have thyroid issues as well. So, but I think sometimes the thyroid is related to not speaking up, which for so long I didn't. So there's a lot of different correlation, I believe, with health. If you're holding in a lot of things too emotionally, it's going to come out in a physical way, as you probably know.
Oh, yes. That's very common.
Right.
And I think what's interesting is a lot of us have lived there for so long, we don't recognize it. I've had people in my world, Sharon, stop, relax, breathe.
Oh.
At first, I would get quite defensive, like I am. But then I realized they were picking up on that was the place I was always at. And so I was unaware that it was not a healthy place to be, that low level of stress. And we've had Sarah Payton on the show, and she did a show called Alarmed Aloneness. And the terminology, I'm not so sure that I'm always alarmed, but the idea of that is you're not really in fight, flight, or freeze, but you're not in rest and digest either. It's this continuing phase of being just slightly agitated, slightly stressed. And so your body never goes into rest and digest. In our conversation here, I'm realizing a lot of highly sensitive people probably get stuck in that netherworld of not ever quite getting out fight or flight and freeze and into rest and digest.
Right. Because if you just think of even in your home, all the stimulation that you can experience, sound and, your children screaming in the background, if you have young children.
I have quite a few friends that are highly sensitive to smells. They can't walk through certain grocery store aisles without having issues too.
Yes. And some people, I think, so even if you have a highly sensitive child and you're highly sensitive, our sensitivities can be different. So that's a good point. So for me, sound is very overwhelming. So for my daughter, it's not quite. So like if I hear anything, like I can hear things way down, like in our basement, something happening. And that's probably a mother thing as well. But a sound is so piercing to me, but she doesn't have that sensitivity quite to that level with sound. So you're going to have different experiences as well. So what could be stronger sensations?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. When you say that, it's one of those things that just so many overlaps. Just when you were talking about sound, I can hear things, and I was even one of those mom going, "It's too quiet." So what are they up to?
Right.
It's too quiet. So I'm sure there's a lot of overlap in wanting you guys to understand and read more about it, especially in Heather's book, The Sensitive Ones, and some of the other resources she's been sharing with us, instead of just slapping that label on yourself. Be sure and spend some time researching, is this really what's going on? And to me, it's something that's going on, but it's not to the exclusion of other things. That you can have more than one. Like in your case, you were mentioning thyroid, and other people adrenal, and other types of autoimmune conditions, because eczema is an autoimmune condition as well. So that's fascinating to me, how we could see the overlaps. And what other tips and techniques have you and your daughter developed to handle just the overwhelming situation?
One of the first tools that we used were flower essences, actually. So I don't know if you've heard of those, but they're a little bit different than essential oils. But flower essences was one of the first tools that we used. And then like essential oils as well, because the smell, right? We're so in tune to smell. For her, that was one thing that's very strong. That was very calming for her. We do see a Reiki master. So we do have where we go and have our chakras cleared and all of that. So that can seem a little woo for some people, but we do that. Drumming, we really created a whole path of what works for us. She does meditation on her own. She does journaling. That's very helpful to clear her mind. I'm trying to think, there's so many things that we tried till we really found what would work. I do grounding practices, which is really stretching and being present within your body. I think that's super important for sensitive people because we're often floating. I feel like we're floating off. Like I was just telling someone, I sometimes feel like I'm a balloon just floating away, where I need to feel grounded in like my present in my body. So grounding, if you search that, there's a lot of different practices for grounding, which I think is a super important, actually, practice for sensitive people. And my daughter would dissociate. So that got to the point where it was not healthy. So if it gets to that point, you should probably seek out help, where she would really disconnect from herself and not remember things.
It's interesting you're going to bring that up. When you said I felt like I was floating away, I was going to bring up the topic that a lot of people, the highly sensitive people, do tend to dissociate. And when they describe, if they can describe it, they're often like, well, I know physically I'm here, but I feel over there. Or I am watching my body do X, Y, and Z. I find that just a fascinating topic. And we did have Indiri Singh on talking about flower essence. And I've never used them, but they sound fascinating. And I do enjoy the sense of essential oils. So I find that fascinating, this wide range of explorations that you and your daughter have undertaken.
Well, and being outdoors, that is really where she gets nurtured. Like we live near woods, we have a pond in our backyard, and that was almost on purpose that we bought this house. So being near in nature is really good for children and adults, sensitive people. That's really where we thrive. And just quiet. So anytime you can quiet your mind, so whatever that means to you, that's really what is needed to replenish yourself. And self-care is essential for us because we are so overwhelmed. I mean, everyone needs it, but for highly sensitive people, I believe it's like crucial that you practice some type of self-care because our bodies are so overwhelmed.
Really want to stress the idea that self-care is not selfishness. Too many
No,
times I
no.
hear people say, "Oh, I don't have the time." And I'm like, wow, if you get sick, you really won't have, then you won't be
Yes.
able to be of help to anyone. Speaking of some of these traits, the idea of
Yes.
introvert comes to mind too,
Oh,
because oftentimes introverts like to sit and watch and they tend to be more quiet. Is that part of the spectrum, or is that entirely sort of a different category?
it is a different category, but a majority of highly sensitive people are introverted. When we look at the extrovert and introvert, most of highly sensitive people are introverted.
And
It's not the same. It's just because we do go inward quite often. We don't thrive in crowds. We do better in small one-on-one type conversations. We're ones that like to go deep with people. We're not like the surface level people. So we do like to have maybe smaller groups of friends. So we are often more introverted.
because I could kind of see some correlation to a lot of
Yeah,
the traits.
right. But then if you think about a highly sensitive person, you're going to have all the other stimuli that you're overwhelmed to. So if you think about what we were talking about, like external things, maybe food and all those other things and sound, and it is very similar, but then it's things that maybe are affecting you if you food allergies or different medications. Those things would take it to a different level of sensitivity than an introvert, because the introvert is more about being around people.
Right. And to me, introverts always like, where do you recharge your batteries? Within yourself,
Yes.
or extroverts love to recharge their batteries out being in groups. Like just get all
Yes.
energized out in groups. So we're just down to the last few minutes. What
Yes.
kind of tips or techniques would you like to have the audience take away from our time together?
Well, first, I want to say have compassion with yourself, especially if this is something new that you're just learning. So be compassionate with yourself if you're just researching and just understanding this, because you've probably went through, like I did, a lot of things that you didn't understand. So, and with my daughter, I did a lot of things with her that weren't probably the best because I didn't understand that she was a sensitive child. So have compassion for yourself through your journey. And just remember that self-care, for sure, if there's anything you do, self-care would be something I would put at the top of your list. And like we said, it's not something that's selfish. It doesn't have to be going to a spa. It can be just adding a small little practice in the morning. So if you do have children, if you even get up 10 minutes early and sip on some tea, like maybe some chai tea or journal, just to get yourself started in a calm space instead of the alarm going off and you're jumping out of bed and the kids are screaming, then you're already starting out overstimulated. So that's going to carry forward throughout your whole day. So if you can even just start a small self-care morning practice or morning ritual, that will really help you. And I hear so many people say, I don't have time to practice self-care. Well, you could even go in the bathroom for a few minutes and take some deep breaths if you have little children, because some have little children and like, I don't know what to do. You can do self-care with your child. Maybe you guys do yoga and stretching, or you're coloring. So I just really want to remind you that you need to take care of yourself so you don't get to this place where you're having physical or emotional issues like anxiety and depression.
Right. Or adrenal burnout.
Burnout. Or right. I was just gonna say burnout. Yes.
Right. Absolutely.
And then you're not good for anybody, right? You're out. Yes.
Right. And, it's interesting that people with one autoimmune condition can often, if they're in remission or on top of, have other autoimmune conditions. So it's critically important to take care of it early and take care of it often. So that you don't let it get away from you. And I think the nice thing in hindsight for me, I know a lot of my triggers now. It's that being able to see patterns, but I know a lot of my triggers now that I didn't know during the first part of the diagnosis. And I'm able to, okay, clue number one, step back, start re-examining where you got off the self-care track is critically important, to make note of those patterns, and whether you journal them or keep some sort of mental filing system, whatever, but be aware of those first symptoms or those first little parts of the pattern. Like, okay, last time this happened, it led to this less than positive outcome.
Yeah.
So let's nip it in the bud early.
And that's what I think over time too, when you understand that you have this trait. Now, me, it's been 7 years. Like you're saying, I know what I need, and I'm reminded when I'm not doing that. So I know that I often need a 20-minute nap during the day just to get myself to, back to feeling well. I know what I should be eating and not eating because my body is sensitive to different foods. So you start to really learn what you do and don't need.
And you don't need to explain it to anyone else.
No. And like I said to the doctor, even, it's like this, I didn't have to. Like, and what I found is when you're very firm, I had someone make a comment just a few years back. I was at a conference, and it was for Dr. Elaine Aron. And they asked, "What are you here for?" And I said, "I'm conference for sensitive people with Dr. Elaine Aron." And the man was like, "Oh, you're sensitive." Like, I was like, "Yes, I am." Like, like you're not offending me. Like, so if you can stand in like your truth of that man didn't affect me like he maybe would have, because he said it like that. "Oh, you're sensitive." I'm like, "I am." And then he didn't know what to like do with it because it didn't affect me. So I think when you really start to own it and understand it, and again, it's a trait, it's not any type of disorder that you did or a disease. It's really part of who you are. Once you get to that place, you just can respond like that to somebody. And I think he kind of like, "Oh, I'm walking away now."
Well, I'm a firm believer, whether you're on the highly sensitive spectrum or not, boundaries are a good thing.
Right? Always. That's another thing I wish we had time to talk about, but boundaries are super important.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And where you said, "I just owned it." That is a great boundary, because you didn't say anything offensive. You let them sit with the discomfort. It's not your problem.
Right? Where usually in my past, I would have felt like I had to over explain or like take on his uncomfortable like feeling onto my, like, "I got to fix it for you." Nope. Just that's how it went. Short conversation.
Right. And those are sometimes the best.
Right.
Let them deal with whatever's going on with them.
That's right.
And who knows, maybe they learned, hopefully, that sense of where you picked up on his discomfort and you were okay.
Right.
Hopefully that person learned, like, well, maybe I don't need to say that next time. Maybe I don't need these little kinds of comments.
Yes.
Well, we're just down to the last couple of minutes. Tell everybody where to get your book and where to find out more about your speaking and your coaching and all the other good things.
Yes, thank you. My book, The Sensitive Ones, is on Amazon. It's also on Barnes & Noble, both online. They're soft cover and Kindle or ebook, so you can find them there. I am on empathmama.com. That's where you'll find like my speaking, my blogs, past writing. There's also a link to the book on there as well. That's really where you'll find a majority of information. On Facebook, it's Empath Mama. We have a Facebook group as well, Empath Mama. So everything is really that. Instagram is the Empath Mama. So those are really how you can find me. And do reach out if you have questions as well. So if you go to my website, there is a contact us, and reach out if you have questions. I love to support others and help others, because that was really the reason I wrote the book, was to share what we experienced.
Well, fantastic. And to share your trials and tribulations and let other people find the easier path. So thank you for writing the book, The Sensitive Ones. It's not a very often discussed topic that I think needs to be discussed more often, because I think there are plenty more of us out there than people realize. So thank you for sharing that. Everyone, that's Heather Nardi, Empath Mama, M-A-M-A Mama, Empath Mama. Yeah. And you can find out more information there. And thank you, everyone, for being here. Have a great week, whatever your adventures. Join me next week for another brand new episode. Enjoy.
The information provided on the Autoimmune Hour, Understanding Autoimmune, and Life Interrupted Radio, including the websites understandingautoimmune.com and lifeinterruptedradio.com, plus social media, is for educational purposes only. What you read, hear, and see on the Autoimmune Hour, Understanding Autoimmune, and Life Interrupted Radio, and its websites, and other media outlets is based on experience only. The information should never be used for any legal, diagnostic, or treatment purposes.
In the next few moments, take a nice, deep breath. And keep breathing, enjoying that breath as you kind of shake it all out. Let it go. That's right. Just shake it out. Shake everything out. That's right. Just right. That's right. Grateful for this moment right here, right now, feeling every bit of you alive and well, feeling healing and soothing and calming energy just tingle throughout you. Getting stronger with each breath as your gratitude begins to grow. Oh, that's right. Wow. Taking the last few minutes of our time together here right now, just to enjoy this growing gratitude list that grows with each moment, each minute, each hour, each day. That's right. And coming right back now, alive, full of energy, happy to be here, in joy, that's right, and feeling grateful for every moment that you have right now. Oh, wow, welcome back. Go in gratitude and enjoy your day.
Research shows we apologize up to 10 times a day, and most of the time, we say sorry as a response to someone else's mistake. What if we thanked people instead of all that unnecessary apologizing? So instead of saying, sorry, I'm rambling, you say, thank you for listening. Join us at projectforgive.com, a free, non-religious resource on global forgiveness.
Do you want to be a better leader, have better relationships, become more self-aware, be a better communicator? Hi, I'm Sharon Sayler, best-selling author, professional speaker, and executive coach. And my life passion is empowering professionals to be the best that they can be. After years of working with professionals, I've discovered the 7 things nobody is telling you that can cost you your clients, sales, and even your career. And I want to give it to you free. You've heard my show, you know my passion, and maybe we'll be working together sooner rather than later. So go grab this ebook now to find out the 7 things that's costing you big time over at SharonSaylor.com/radio gift.
Hey, hon, what you doing with your phone? Taking pictures?
No, I'm asking it questions.
Like what?
Hey, Bobo, do flowers have best friends?
I'm sorry. I'm afraid I don't know that.
Hey, follow me. I want to show you something. Look, flowers do have best friends.
Whoa.
Some answers can only be found in nature. Discover the unsearchable. Visit discovertheforest.org to find a trail near you. Brought to you by the United States Forest Service and the Ad Council.